I want to thank all of you folks for making it out on this beautiful Thursday night. Thank you for supporting the group here. This is amazing turnout, and thank you, dear, for all of your donations. That was terrific. That's very gracious. It's nice to have that in memory of your husband. A little background on myself. My name is Sam Carlino. I'm the owner here at Sam's Barbecue. And my dad and I opened the restaurant in 1992. And I was born and raised in Campbell. I live about 2 miles down the road here, near Bascom and Dry Creek. And Bascom Avenue's been very good to our family over the last 80 years or so. We had the Thai market that they opened up in Bascom Avenue down on Bascom and San Carlos, and Sam's Barbecue on Bascom. But I really want to talk about my dad and his brothers and what they meant to this community and how they got started. Because if you've read my book, I think last time I spoke in front of all you, I was talking about my grandfather. And my grandfather wasn't a good guy, but my dad and his brothers were. They really turned out, it's an amazing story. It's part of the reason why I wrote the book, because I wanted to honor my dad and his brothers for being such good people. They could have gone really bad, and they didn't. And in 1930, well, this picture here is my dad and his 5 brothers, or 6 boys. And this is Denver, Colorado in 1930. And a year later, their father, who was Colorado's biggest bootlegger, there was literally 12 headlines like this in a 9-month period about my grandfather, Pete Carlino. When he was killed, it was top billing on all the Denver, Rocky Mountain News, Pueblo Chieftain, all the papers covered it. So they were given basically 24 hours notice to leave Colorado alive in 1932. This is my grandmother. This is my Uncle Pete. If you know my cousin Pete Carlino, that's his dad. If you know my cousin Steve, or remember my Aunt Ann Carlino, that's her husband, Vic Carlino. He was about 16 years old at the time when my grandfather was killed. So they were given 24 hours notice to leave Colorado alive, and they made their way out to California via this 1929 Dodge Senior sedan. Wow. So the entire family, 6 boys and the mother did not drive. The 16 and 17-year-old sons took turns driving, made their way from Denver, Colorado down to San Diego, and from San Diego, after an incredible sojourn getting down there, they made their way up to San Jose, where my great-grandfather lived. So this is my Uncle Vic. If you remember my Aunt Ann Carlino, if you went to St. Martin's, you probably remember Ann. That's her husband, my dad's oldest brother, Vic. And when they made it to San Jose, my great-grandfather lived here. My dad's grandfather on his mother's side, his last name was Reggio. He owned a grocery store and a small place, card room, and rented a house on 802 and 804 and 806 Almaden Avenue, not too far from Highway 280. The house my dad grew up has actually been consumed on 16th Street by Highway 280, so that's gone. But my dad grew up going out to his great-grandfather's farm, where they did a lot of olive oil pressing. And this is in San Jose. So this picture was taken in Almaden. He owned some property out there, and he would crush his own olives for his grocery store. And this is my great-grandfather, Joe Reggio. That's a whole nother story. So, in 1938, the brothers had learned from their great-grandfather the grocery business to a certain extent. They decided to open up this was it right here. It was a 4x8 piece of wood with a little roof on it on Monterey Highway, South San Jose. So if you were traveling from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you had to go through San Jose. You know the way to San Jose was written because you had to come through here if you're going to San Francisco or Los Angeles. All roads passed through San Jose, for the most part, unless you took one, but that was miserable. So they started with a small little stand, and within about a year of just selling fresh orange juice to weary travelers, they turned it into the Garden Spot. And they ran the Garden Spot from 1938 to 1942, right after World War II started. They shut down the fruit and vegetable stand. They were all patriotic boys, and my uncles went to go build Liberty ships in Oakland for the war effort, and my dad was drafted out of San Jose High School as a senior and went to New Guinea and fought the Japanese. So these are pictures from 1938 right here at the Garden Spot, and this is how they got their start in the grocery business. And they built this place around the entire first little stand. Okay, so that's where it all started. They paid homage to where it all started. It was a little oasis for weary travelers. If you were traveling from Los Angeles and you've been driving for 5 hours, 6 hours, probably even longer back then, and you have fresh watermelon and fresh orange juice and fresh pineapple juice and all these different fresh juices on ice. It was like a little paradise. This is a picture of my dad and my cousin Vito. Now Vito lives in Colorado. He's 93 years old, and I stay at his house. I stay at this little boy's house when I go to Colorado to do my book tours. Yeah. This is a picture of him enjoying the Orange Julius. This is 1940. And this is him sitting on top of his dad's sedan there. And this is a picture of his dad and my Uncle Vic and my Uncle Torchy. They call his real name was Sam Reggio, but they call him Torchy because he was always lit. So early on, early 1940s, picture of my dad in his first car, and right after he gets his first car, World War II, gets started, and then he ends up getting drafted out of high school. This is a picture of him in Okinawa, Japan, right after the Battle of Okinawa, which is actually the most deadliest battle in the history of the United States. Most people don't know that, but we lost more people in Okinawa than anywhere else. So when he came back from World War II, and I'm sorry, I'm backtracking right now. We also had his brother Steve passed away. His brother, his older brother by 2 years, passed away in he was on the Enterprise in Pearl Harbor, but it was in June of 1941 when he died. He died of a diving accident, and he wrote my dad and his brothers, and he said, "We'll be at war with the Japanese by the end of the year." And I still have that letter, so it's pretty amazing. So all the brothers, for the most part, were served in the armed forces. That's my Uncle Joe. My Uncle Chuck did not serve, but he was working on the Liberty ships. My Uncle Vic worked on the Liberty ships as well. So after World War II, they come back and they do a number of different things. They try different items. My dad and my Uncle Joe were firefighters, and that didn't work out. My dad had a very difficult time because they were the low man's on the pole. They would have to pull the bodies out of the fires, and my dad had to pull a little baby out, and he said that was it. He goes, "I can't do this." So they got back into the food business, and this is my Uncle Joe and my Uncle Vic at the Stanford Market up in Palo Alto. And this is where they were working. They were getting their training, working in the grocery business at the Stanford Market. At the time, my dad was a butcher at the Peninsula Market up in Menlo Park. So they would travel all the way to Palo Alto, Menlo Park every day to get their grocery experience, their formal grocery experience. And this is them at the market up there at the Stanford Market. So in 1950, they decided to open up their own grocery store, which we were trying to figure out the name of the store, and it was a big clock right on top of the building. So they said, well, let's just call it Time Market. So it started off as a real small little produce, fresh produce. This is opening day with my Uncle Chuck, my Uncle Vic, my Uncle Pete up at the front counter, and my dad, my Aunt Ellen, who was married to my Uncle Joe, and my Aunt Ann. You probably remember her if you went to St. Martin's Church. They worked behind the counter in the deli counter. And this was in January of 1950 that Time Market opened up. So by the mid-50s, they had grown exponentially. There was a small, shoe repair shop on the corner. They commandeered that after a human out of business. And they eventually had about close to 4,000 square feet of space, of floor space. So this is the early 60s. If you read my book, there's a chapter called The Outlaw Josie Carlino. And this is my Aunt Josie from San Diego. She has a full chapter written about her. And it's worth buying the book just to find out, get her spaghetti sauce recipe. So early 60s, it's my Uncle Chuck up there. They were just starting to get these canned ham in. It was kind of a new fad, you know. It was a new thing. It was almost like Spam in a way, you know. So that was a big display that they had at the market. And they thought that, oh wow, we're gonna try canned hams. Yeah, ooh. So we're gonna flash forward to 1967, and Time Market was really, at this point, it's been around 17 years, and they had done their full remodel. The store looks completely different now. They got their full neon. This was all completely neon at night. At the Circle Pharmacy, this was all neon, full neon. This corner just jumped out at you at night. If you drove down Bascom and San Carlos Street, because that's where all the auto mall, that's where all the auto sales were anyway. So everything was neon back then. And it's too bad we don't have any nighttime pictures of how beautiful this was, because it really was a work of art with the cow and the fish, and just illuminated with the lights behind it. It was really neat. But they were establishing themselves as the premier Italian market at the time. There was no Lenardi's or Cosentino's or Zenatos going on. There was Cosentino's was down the street, but it was a much smaller store. They had not built the big market that they had built in '75, which was now the Lenardi's. So this was the premier market. If you were Italian, you came to this part of town to get all your wares. It really was. They had a lot of imported cheese and meats and deli meats and pastas and oils and all kinds of things from Italy that you couldn't get anywhere else. They had the best fresh seafood. That my Uncle Pete ran the seafood department. My Uncle Joe ran the produce department. My dad ran the meat department. My Uncle Vic ran the deli. My Uncle Chuck ran the grocery. So all five of those brothers had a part in forming the market to really be the best that there was. There was 3 big grocery stores where you probably remember the Thrift Village that was next to that used to be a Betancourt's Market. That was the premier grocery store at the time. 2 more markets went out of business. Supermarkets, big supermarkets went out of business in a period of years, and this small little grocery store stayed, and it was all because of quality service and quality product. They charged a little bit more, but people would pay for quality, and that's what they found out. If you give them good service and good quality. Here's a picture. There's my dad, my Uncle Vic. That's Tony Romano and Nance Cerrone. We were our butchers. Tony Romano ended up leaving in '77 when we shut down from the market to go to a deli. He ended up at Zenato's Market, and he was the butcher at Zenato's for the next 10 years over there. So this is some pictures of them at the at the market at time. You can see it was a busy place. That's my Aunt Ellen and my Aunt Ann behind the deli counter. They're still there. They were there on opening day, 67, 68. They're still working. You could just the place was bustling. It was the neatest place. At the end, there was a 5-gallon pickled pig's feet jar that Dad drilled a hole in, and they filled it with cocktail sauce. And they had fresh shrimp cocktails. And you would see, as a kid, I just remember seeing all these ladies pushing their cart, and they'd have an empty plastic cup with a spoon in it. Because the first thing they do, they go to the fish department, get 50 cents, they would get their cup of shrimp cocktail. You press the little button, and the 5-gallon pig's feet jar would drop down the fresh made cocktail sauce, and they would eat their shrimp cocktails while they're shopping. And when they go to check out, 50 cents, okay, for the, and it was the neatest thing, to see that. But it was so this is back in 1968. The Buffon Heritage is a great. Yeah. So we flash forward to 1976, and there's an article that is in a grocery magazine. I could recite it, but I think I'm going a little bit long, so I'm not gonna read the article. But they took a few pictures. There's one picture that they took of my dad making Italian sausage. You try the Italian sausage tonight. That recipe, my dad told me between Christmas and New Year's, they would sell over 2,500 pounds in a 1 week period. It was incredible the amount of sausage. They were just making sausage. Just 2 guys, that's all they were doing was making sausage. It was really neat. But they had this nice article that they wrote, and they talk about the market, and this was in a trade magazine in 1976. Thank God I was able to capture this and scan it, because it was in my safe this time last June when we got broken into in the middle of the night. And my safe was stolen, and I had some valuable artwork that my friend Art Boos, original pieces that he did, was stolen, and this magazine was stolen. You can keep all the money. This meant more to me than anything, to lose this magazine. There is Freddie. I don't know if you remember Fred DeSorbo. He was my partner in crime here at the restaurant. He was my best friend. He passed away of cancer in 2010. He was my fishing partner, my best friend. He was my dad's best friend too, and super nice guy.
Yes.
His son Mark is a member of Sons of Sicily with me, and so our friendship continues on. But he was the sweetest guy in the world. He really was. He was the best. He was funnier. You walk in, and everyone knew your name at Time Market. It was really neat. It was like Cheers in a way. Everyone knew your name. When you look at the displays, it's just like stacked to the windows. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's crazy the amount of volume that these guys were doing, and they would sell this. This stuff would all move out in a day. In 1960, their volume was over $1 million a year. Back in 1960.
That's crazy.
That was a lot of volume for a small little store like that. They did more volume per square footage than any other store. Yeah, so it's just stacked. I don't think the refrigeration is taking effect. So you can see the Columbus salami over here. They really like the Columbus brand salami. They carry the other brands, Galileo and Molinari stuff. But I always knew my dad was he liked the Columbus brand. So that's Dave Machado. His daughter ended up working for us here for years. These sticks of salami are almost 6 feet long. They go down to about here. Okay, This is the salami that they would cut, and then they would slice for the counter. This was salami only for cutting. You didn't sell that as nobody walked in and took a whole, chub of salami, but it did. It went all the way down to here. And that's what all these hooks were for. You got the crisponi, all this stuff up here. It was pretty neat. So my Uncle Joe was the produce aficionado. Like Phil Cosentino is now, my Uncle Joe was back then. He knew more about produce than anybody, and he would go down San Francisco, and then he'd go to 9th Street to the produce terminal over there and pick it up fresh. So there's the Italian sausage that you guys had tonight. It's no longer $1.59 a pound, but you can buy it here in the Rings. We still make that same Italian sausage, the same recipe, the same way, and we vacuum pack it and then I freeze it fresh. So when you get it, it's frozen, but it's because we don't have a counter and we don't have the volume of people buying the sausage. So as soon as it's made, we vacuum pack it and then we freeze it. So it's as fresh as we can get it for being frozen. So these are some pictures from the 70s, and they were really doing well. But as with all families, there always is some sort of conflict between the brothers. And there was a little bit of conflict between one of the brothers and my uncles. So they kind of peeled off over the years. One by one, they would retire or leave or go do something else. My dad was the last one. By about 77, he was tired. The grocery business was killing him. And he was like, there he is here, my dad and my Uncle Vic, my mom and my Aunt Ann. And he convinced his brother Joe. He says, let's take this workload off of us a little bit. Let's stop, being in the grocery store, and let's go into just the deli and the restaurant business. It'll be a lot easier. No, it was twice the work for half the money.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So my dad did that for about another 2 years. So 77. This is the last Christmas party at Michael's restaurant down there in Sunnyvale in El Camino Real.
Oh, yeah.
They love going to Michael's. This is their annual Christmas party. My dad and my Uncle Joe.
Look at those outfits.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And my dad was always a little better dresser than my Uncle Joe. That's where I got it from. No, I'm not wearing a Hawaiian shirt to a Christmas party. So they changed over from grocery store to a deli and a restaurant, and they were doing a lot of catering at the time, and so they ended up changing over to Time Deli. It was no longer Time Market. They took down all of the neon signs. People ask me all the time, where'd they go? I have no idea. They probably just threw them away.
Yeah.
They didn't understand at the time how significant those signs were, and they just tossed them. So the cow and the fish and all the other neon, they had neon inside the market as well, and all that stuff was removed when they did the remodel. So this is them that they're ripping out all everything used to go this direction, and then they changed it to go this direction, and they ended up putting in the dining room here. You can still see the neon choice meats and poultry and fish at the top, and all that neon went away as well. So this is Time Deli in 1977. After they focused more on deli and wine, fine wines, and alcohol and cheese and meats and things like that, and then the restaurant part. Well, they didn't understand how much work a restaurant is. I mean, a restaurant is the hardest business in the world. It really is. It's tough. The grocery store was much more profitable, and it required less people to make more money in it. And so I have this butcher block in my dining room.
Oh, that's cool. Very cool.
I looked at that picture and I realized, I go, oh my God, it's right there. Yeah. But I did these imported cheeses from Italy and imported wines and imported salamis and crisponis that they would get. It was really neat. So this is the dining room in 1977. It's 1977. I'm sorry, 1977. And by 1987, my dad sold out to his brother Joe in 1979. My dad left and went to work part-time at the San Jose Flea Market for his friend George Bum, and he was in charge of the 26 snack bars at the flea market. So he's the one that introduced the barbecue out there in 1987. It was doing so well for the flea market, and that's how he come up with the idea, because I was a butcher at Sonato's. I was a journeyman cutter down the street here, and he asked me, I was 24 years old, if I wanted to open up a restaurant, and I said, sure. So in 1991, we started looking for locations. We found this spot here, and I got out of the butcher business, and he was still working part-time for the flea market, but that's how we ended up opening Sam's Barbecue. But by 1979, my dad had sold out. My Uncle Joe on the right, he had kept it till 1987, going into 88. And he sold it to the Justin family in Brennan, Kotapilli. And they ran it as Time Deli. They didn't really change much. So there's some more pictures of the deli itself. That's my Uncle Joe. And these are old Time Deli spots. So Time Deli ran from 1977 into October of 77 until 2017, and it got closed down by Scott Johnson, really the wheelchair guy that he goes around and does frivolous lawsuits. So this is my introduction to fine whiskey and cigarettes. At 3 years old, I thought I'd throw that in there since we're going old school. This is my Uncle Joe's house. But this is probably one of the last pictures of my dad, my Uncle Vic, and my Uncle Pete together. It was taken around 1989. My Uncle Vic died in May of 89, and then my Uncle Pete died in August of 96, and then my dad passed away in September of 2002. So my dad lasted the longest, but my Uncle Joe ended up being the oldest. My Uncle Joe lasted to 82, my dad was 78. But they left quite a legacy. And in 2017, this is an article that was in the Mercury News about how Time Market had closed down, or Time Deli had closed, and that they tell the story about how Scott Johnson had come in, and the building was real old, and they couldn't keep up with all the renovations that needed to be done to keep it up. So unfortunately, they haven't fixed the law. I don't disagree with the law. I just disagree with the way that it's implemented. They don't give us store owners a chance to get it fixed. They just open the door for a frivolous lawsuit, and all of a sudden we get hit with a $300,000 lawsuit. We got a $300,000 bill, and if we fight it, if we win, it's going to cost us $500,000 in court fees to win. If we lose, it could be $1 million to $1.2 million. So they know this, so we settle. So, and that's all.
Should be in jail. That lawyer should be in jail.
It's a flawed law that needs to be fixed. But that's another note. We'll talk about that another night. But I just wanted to share a little family history with you with Time Market. It really was the neatest place in the world to grow up, I'll tell you that. Those guys saw me walk in, and they were just like, oh, geez, holy terror. I'll tell you one funny story before we end. They got robbed a lot over there. They had a lot of burglaries, and a lot of people would pilfer food, and they were constantly having trouble over the years. And They had a little emergency bell up at the front counter, and it was just a regular push bell, and it rang, ring, ring, ring. And one day I'm up at the register, and they're busy, and I look at and I see the bell, and I'm probably 4 or 5 years old, and I'm pushing it, and I can hear it ring in the back, and I go, oh wow, ring, 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 and all of a sudden, everyone. My Uncle Chuck's coming around with a 38 in his hand, the butchers are coming with the knives, and I'm like, I got in big trouble. I didn't push the button ever again. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Kim.
Oh my God. Thank you. Is that on? Okay, thank you, Sam. This story is going to be posted on our IHF site, and maybe we'll hear chapter 3 over here down the line. Thank you, Sam. This is just amazing piece of San Jose life. It's a shame that it's gone.
Good place to eat. I love it.
All things must pass.
Yes.